Next up, we're going to the north of the border in Manitoba.
So I just kind of want to show a map to show where Manitoba is. Usually every year someone asks me where it is, so I just want to show the map. It looks quite big. If you were here this morning, you saw the ranking by geographical size. But in reality, like 90% of our roads are just in the lower quadrant, probably within 200 miles of the U.S. border. This year at the conference is Andre Dupuis. He's the servicing program manager in the materials branch. Mark Talbot, the regional maintenance manager from Region 4. And myself, Ryan Thompson. Kind of overview of our network. We have 8,000 kilometers of bituminous pavement, roughly 5,000 miles, 4,000 of AST, which is basically a chip seal over base used for low volume roads, a little bit of concrete and quite a bit of gravel roads as well. In the preservation strategy and life cycle, project selection is decision tree, basically regional selection. So we have a decision tree to give guidance to the regions, and then they choose the projects and approval with head office, similar to some of the other DOTs talked about here. In our decision tree, we use cracking, ride, rut, ADT, and also the treatment history. Preservation project types include rout and seal, chip seal, microsurfacing, and we have done a little bit of preservation seal and rejuvenators. Things that we're missing that we haven't done too much yet are thin lays, ultra thin bond and wearing course. We're not quite there yet. For rout and seal, we typically do a rout and seal in all our cracks 2 to 4 years after paving. We use in-house crews traditionally, but starting this year we have a mix of contract and in-house. Generally pretty good performance. Because we do it so soon to the capital project, we're allowed to capitalize this work, so it saves maintenance dollars. We do some as well that are a bit older, some that cracking has developed further on the life cycle, or some that we were missed initially, and that's about 30% of our budget. We do have some kind of mixed feelings on doing rout and seal on longitudinal cracks, especially if we're doing a micro or chip seal down the road. You can see in this picture there's some spalling on there. So we are going to try clean and fill. So we've been doing routing 2 inches on all our cracks, which is not necessarily best practice, but that's what we have been doing. For our chip seal program, we have about 15 to 20 million annually we spend, about 500 kilometers. 500 to 700 kilometers. So again, this is regional selection with allocation of dollars from head office. So depending on how many candidates, we give so much money to each region. In the past, we kind of waited for the condition to dictate the treatment, so there'd be a little bit of cracking before, and often we were waiting up to 15 years before doing a chip seal. We're going to move that forward to try to target between 7 and 10 years. I guess ideally, probably would be even sooner, but it's kind of a bridge point. We're going to call this preservation chip seals. We do have a lot of very low volume roads that are in quite poor condition. And for this, our maintenance staff really still want to, they think if we can just do a chip seal, we can hold it together and it won't be so bad. So we're going to continue to do those as well, and we're going to call those maintenance chip seals. And so we're going to try to allocate dollars for both preservation and maintenance. And this was something we talked about last year at the agency discussion, so it was kind of good that I brought something back. The regions seem to like that as well, and I think that'll help kind of prioritize the preservation chip seal, opposed to just having the regions. They'll tend to want to do maintenance chip seals, so by allocating the money for preservation, that should help in that regard. For microsurfacing, again, we allocate the money. The project selection criteria is choose some that have a little bit of rutting and typically have been in fair condition. We have about $15 million annually. The chip seal and micro combined is probably about 10% of our overall budget, so we're doing not too bad in that regard. And we have been fairly successful at keeping fair roads fair. We have kind of estimated right now of probably 60% of our network, maybe more, is less than 2,000 ADT. So we maybe, instead of shooting for a percent of good, maybe we're going to try to minimize the poor roads. We found that we have pretty good cost benefit compared to hot mix, especially in remote areas where there might not be a hot mix plant in the area. So to mob up hot mix plant for a thin lay can be quite costly. This is one of my favorite kind of really ugly graphs, but I think kind of shows what we have done. This is the IRI of all our microsurfacing projects in the last about 9 years. So we'll go 225 projects. The red lines is the FHWA good and poor for IRI, so 95 inches per mile or 1.5 meters per kilometer and 170. So as you can see from the graph, we've typically been doing roads and keeping them fair roads fair. As far as for building pavement preservation culture, we have really good organizational buy-in for rout and seal, chip seal, and microsurfacing. But I think part of that is because we have siloed the money. So the regions have to use that money only for that treatment. Probably a good start, but maybe not optimal. But outside of these silos for chip seal and microseal, it's tough for preservation dollars to compete with asphalt paving projects for roads that are in very poor condition. So worst first, which includes increasing loading, removing spring restrictions, or upgrading substandard geometry. We've also haven't really done many inlay projects or mill and overlays. In the last 10 years, we've probably only done a few every year, but we are starting to do more of those. And we haven't done any thin lift overlays, and we are considering siloing the money for that and also trialing some thin lift overlays. Ideally, you'd want to build a culture around measurable performance-based project selection to meet condition goals at lowest life cycle costs for various subnetworks. So again, this sounds a lot like a TAMP. We don't have MAP 21, so we're not quite there yet. We did recently hire, or the government hired a consultant to overview our entire department, so that could lead to kind of developing a more formal TAMP. And I find that sometimes it takes a little bit more than numbers and graphs to change the status quo. You kind of need a different type of buy-in. We do have a meme strategy to try to convince people project selection. This is actually just a joke. I just made this up the other day. But that's all I got for today.
I'm curious, a couple of things. Like the chip seals, and are those done in-house or are those by contractor? And the second question was, you said you are doing some in-house crack sealing and contractor. Have you seen a difference in final result with those?
For just starting this year, we have only chip seal. We're only contracting it out. Previously, we had in-house crews, and then we had a couple years of both. Now it's only contractor. Results, hit and miss. We had some poor results with contractors on chip seal. I mean, we're quite geographically isolated. Our contractors weren't that experienced, so maybe it's going to take a couple years. For the Rout and Seal, this is the first year, and I haven't really heard anything yet. I'm not too sure about the results on that.
Thank you, Ryan.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.